Hi and welcome to another episode of Delaware County Political News, Meet the Expert. Today we are here with Simon Campbell. Simon is a former school board director, civic and political activist, government watchdog, and self-described agitator. Simon, thanks for being a guest on Delaware County Political News.
I like that introduction, very good.
On the day of our filming, October 20th, 2017, the citizens of Delaware County are following the county council campaign in which the Democrats are accusing David White and the Republicans of a pay-to-pay scheme involving millions. Specifically, David White's business received $2.5 million from local Delaware County municipalities, and David White has voted to award at least $5 million in contracts to numerous entities that have contributed nearly $30,000 to his campaign and $159,000 to the Delaware County Republican Finance Committee. The Democratic campaign discovered this information from a law called the Right to Know law. Our guest, Simon Campbell, knows a little about this law. Simon, tell us about your experience. Actually, tell us about the law itself.
The Right to Know law is an incredibly important law in Pennsylvania. It was passed by the General Assembly and updated in 2009. And in any civilized democratic society, the way that we have democracy that works is when we have open and transparent government. So I look at the Right to Know law as a tool for ordinary citizens, no matter what their interests might be, no matter what their political leanings might be, as a way to hold government and government officials accountable for what they're doing, for the decisions they're making, for what they're doing with public money. And I think it is, quite frankly, essential to have a tool like the Right to Know law for a vibrant, functioning democracy, because corruption needs darkness in which to fester and grow. And the Right to Know law is all about transparency.
Before this law, what did citizens of Pennsylvania have to do when they wanted to know something about government?
Well, before the current law that was passed in 2009, we did have an old 1957 Right to Know law, but it was very ineffective. You had to basically go to government and prove why something was a public record. And when the legislature changed the law, they put in an entirely new presumption. Now, every record in the possession of any government agency is presumed public. And if the government wants to deny it, they have to prove a denial basis. And now we have a new Office of Open Records, which means that if you get a denial, because they can still do denials, and many of them still do, you can file an appeal without needing a lawyer. You can send it by email, and you can get a legal final determination on your appeal very quickly within 30 days. So now we have this new law that transforms the presumption of the law, everything's presumed public, and you have a way to appeal that is simple, easy, and cost-effective. So much more information is now available than it ever used to be.
Now, how about a request? Do you need a lawyer, or do you have to be some educated government official to be able to even file the request itself?
Nope. Filing a request, you can simply send them an email. You just say, pursuant to the Right to Know law, I'm requesting the following information. Now, there are tips and tools of the trade that I've learned over the years, because we still do get difficult government agencies that, don't have the right mindset and still want to deny you. But the act of filing a request, you can go to the Office of Open Records website, download their request form. I just frankly do it on my own. I just send them an email. This is what I'm looking for, and I expect them to respond to me. So it's very, very simple.
What is the cost for doing this?
Nothing. Now, nothing at all. You just send them the request. If they deny you, file an appeal with the OOR, like I said, the Office of Open Records. You don't need a lawyer. They have lawyers that will issue a final determination at no cost to you. Now, there is a cost if you go beyond the initial OOR appeal. Let's suppose you win as a requester, and then the agency decides they're going to go to court. Some of them do. Unfortunately, too many of them do. So there can be court costs at that level. But most of the time, you're going to either get what you want, or you'll file an OOR appeal at no cost, and you'll win. Hopefully you'll win. There's no guarantee. And there's no cost to any of that.
OOR, Office of Open Records?
Office of Open Records. You can Google them, or I think it's openrecords.pa.gov, and it's very, very simple to file an appeal, really simple.
How about the records that you've requested, that you obtained? Is there a cost per page to get those? I believe there is in Delaware County.
They play games. Government agencies, the law says they can charge 25 cents per page. The way I get around that is I insist on them sending me everything electronically. In fact, I put it in my request, I'm only seeking electronic copies, electronic information, because most information in government agencies today, let's face it, is in computer systems. And there's case precedent that says if they have it in a computer system, they have to extract it in the electronic form it's in and send it to you. So I've become, through my experience, quite good at getting around this per page cost thing that they try and do, and just say, look, I know you have it in electronic form, send it to me in electronic form. And they have to.
Really?
You're smiling. Why?
We have incurred steep costs in Delaware County of enormous amounts of money for pages and pages of records. And
yes.
What I glean is that all we need to do is insist on electronic copies, assuming that they have these records in electronic format.
Yes, now if they say, look, we only have it in paper form, then it's harder to say, even with that, I've tried telling them, look, just put it through a scanner and send it. You don't actually create a new paper when you through a scanner. Some of them are difficult with you, but the reality is most documents and most pieces of information are in computer databases. And as long as you phrase the request, I want the following information, and you describe it, extracted from your computer databases and sent to me in electronic form, we have Commonwealth Court case precedent that says they have to do it. So that's how you get around these difficult people that say, oh, we're going to price you out of the market.
Simon, you're a pro at doing this, aren't you?
I've done it a while.
Okay, so follow up on this. First, you actually testified at some state hearings in terms of one of the amendments to the law in its current form. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've testified a couple of times in Harrisburg on proposed changes to the right to know law, because they are thinking about updating it, seeing what works, what doesn't work. It came into effect in 2009. So they've invited me to testify based on my experience as a citizen requester, someone who wants more records. So they get that perspective from me, and they invite other people to testify, like the government people show up and they complain about it, how government people like to complain about transparency.
What was the results of your hearing? Do you know if they accepted your recommendations?
Right now, the right to know law is they're still considering changing it. In fact, I just spoke this week to the people at the State House Legislative and Finance Budget Committee. They are putting together a report for the legislature on proposed changes, and they wanted my input. So I think the next step in this process is the legislature is going to get reports, independent reports, and then they'll look at those reports and consider what, if any, changes they want to make to the law. And so I'm involved in, the discussion around what, if anything, should we change. And of course, my involvement as a citizen is we need more transparency, we need to make it easier for requesters. But you get people on the other side of the argument, the government agencies that try to make life easier for themselves instead of thinking about us.
So how do you use the law, Simon?
Oh, goodness. That depends on how I wake up and feel in the morning. I use it for all different kinds of things. Anyone that's watching this, I would say, what are your interests? What are you interested in? Maybe you're interested in something in your school district. Maybe the case you were reading on the intro, something in your municipality. What are they doing with contracts? Whatever your interests are, you can codify that into a right to know request. It's as simple as taking the thought in your head and putting it down on a piece of paper. So to answer the question, what am I interested in? Anything and everything. I've gotten involved in everything from union contracts, public employees' salaries, to what am I doing right now? The School Boards Association. I've gotten involved in records pertaining to them, what they're doing, how they're getting public money and how they're spending it. I get involved with the judicial branch and how they're not following the right to know law. That's a whole other topic we could get into. So whatever you know, I find interesting to me, and some of it is political. I make a lot of requests that are political in nature. I don't just mean, you know, how can I bash on a person in a party? I mean, what is happening, you know, with government? Because a lot of government is, unfortunately, too political in nature. And you can use the right to know law to uncover a lot of that.
Sure.
Who's making campaign contributions? That's a good one.
So, I mean, yeah, we jested in your introduction about calling you a troublemaker, but you're really interested in accountability. And when you do a search, you actually are focused because you suspect or you are looking for some type of abuse in government. Isn't that true?
Yeah, even if it's not abuse, I just want to know what's going on. What are they doing? How much money are they spending on X? You know, let's say X is your school district has a window cleaning company, and you think it's because the superintendent knows the guy that runs the window cleaning company. You know, you can go make a right to know request and find out the contract with the window cleaning company, then go to a school board meeting and say into the public microphone on the tape, Superintendent, do you know the owner of this company? Because this company was just paid this much money in my tax dollars. You put it on your blog, all of a sudden people are talking about, wait a minute, the superintendent knows the guy that runs the window cleaning company, and this is how much money was spent? That's not okay. So you can take an interest or something that is, even if you're not looking to uncover corruption, you can simply expose something that might not be seen to be legit. And the right to know law is an incredible tool for doing that.
You've had lawsuits in reference to some right to know requests also, is that right?
Oh yeah, well when you say lawsuits, that's the process I was telling you about before. When you file an appeal to the Office of Open Records, if you win and the other side doesn't like it, the government agency, they can challenge in court. And I've been in a number of court proceedings around the right to know law. And sometimes I've been in situations where we have third parties that come into the equation and they try to stop the release of records, and then there's litigation around that. A few years ago, the Professors Union at the state university system, they got involved in one of my requests, and they ended up taking me and the state university system to court because they didn't want the professors' benefits costs being released to the public. And I was like, give me a break. You know, ended up winning that case, of course. I mean, this is public money. When you're a public employee, your salary, your benefits, how much it's costing is all public information. Yet we have some people that don't really understand that, even in today's world. I mean, I routinely publish on my websites every public school employee's salary on the internet. It's public record. You don't like a public salary? Don't be a public employee. You know, so a lot of this is, with the right to know law, is cultural. We do have institutional resistance to transparency from, in my experience at least, public sector unions who don't really like me too much. That's okay. They don't have to. I'm not their biggest fan. But I think that everyone has an interest in good, open and honest government.
When you find something that you perceive not to be good government, you sometimes put it on the internet and do a YouTube video about it, don't you?
Sure.
Give some examples.
Centre County. I don't live in Centre County, and a few years ago I probably couldn't have picked it out on a map. But I got, you know, I read a news story that 2 local judges there and the district attorney had filed a lawsuit to try to stop cell phone texting records between the DA's office and judges during a trial from being public. I read on the news wires that some local defense attorneys, I guess, had gotten wind that prosecutors and judges were texting each other during the trials. Now that's unbelievably corrupt that that's going on. And so they requested from the county the cell phone records to see how much these people were texting back and forth, because the phones they were using were taxpayer provided cell phones. And in response to this brewing scandal, the DA's office and 2 of the judges filed a lawsuit to try to prevent the release of the cell phone texting records. They sued the county, don't release it, you know. I read this and I'm like, what the heck is this? I jumped into it, right? I'm from Bucks, but I'm just like, now I'm mad, right? And I'm like, I want those cell phone texting records. I'll put them on my darn website. I don't want to hear about judges and DA prosecutors texting each other during a trial. That's completely corrupt. And by the way, we need to throw that district attorney out of office in the next election. So that's where how I get, right? And she just ran for re-election in the Democrat primary, and I got involved politically, and we got rid of her in the primary. Yes. But that's a classic example, isn't it? Of something that you hear about and you go, what?
Simon, you were curious about who paid for the law fees, the legal fees of that, weren't you?
The legal fees on, probably. Yeah, I mean, when these lawsuits occur, litigation of the right to know law, the government side of the equation, they're paying lawyers. So sometimes when I'm in a dispute with a government agency, I get cheeky and I'm like, I want the money, the legal fees that the lawyer of the township, the school district or whatever, I want to see how much money he's making off of my right to know dispute. Then I'll publicize his invoices on the internet. So you get these lawyers that are like, my invoices are on the internet. Well, you're charging the taxpayers, aren't you?
You've have other YouTube videos where you give public officials advice too, don't you?
Well, I lobby them or in my inimitable way. Yes, I shout at them very politely.
Simon, you've also made videos not in response to a right to know request, but also just in response to corruption you've seen in your own county. Is that right?
Not just county, anywhere around the state. Anywhere I feel that something isn't right, isn't legitimate, outside of the right to know law, I'll just record a video, put it on YouTube, put it on Facebook page, get it out there, and let people talk about it.
I saw your video, that's how I actually came across you, when you were giving a explanation of what happened with your GOP chairwoman, Pat Poprick.
Yes.
Do you remember making that one?
Oh yes, I probably made a couple around the time. Sometimes I update them and reinvent them, but oh absolutely, yes, because what the Bucks County GOP are doing is completely and utterly unacceptable.
Now, you and a fellow, or at least this fellow committee person, ran into some difficulty with this chairman. Could you just give me a brief summary of what happened there?
Sure. A friend of mine, a local friend of mine, Dan Moan, who is a committee man in the Bucks County Republican Party, or I should say former, since they decided to get rid of him in a completely corrupt, sleazy manner, is an active committee man in Yardley Borough, or was. And what happened was, Pat Poprick, who is the chairwoman of the Bucks County GOP, she kind of runs the whole committee with what I consider like an iron fist, you know, you should all do what I want. And people like me and people like Dan and people who are perhaps more of a conservative mindset within the Republican Party don't like taking our marching orders. And so Dan had gotten involved in a primary election, helping a candidate for the position of supervisor that was not the party boss favored candidate. Now, this is a free country, this is America. This is a Republican on Republican dogfight in a primary, and my friend Dan was supporting a candidate that the party boss didn't support. And throughout, what happened was, the party boss candidate filed an ethics complaint to the Bucks County chairwoman about Dan's political activism in that election. And amazingly, she arranged for an ethics hearing to basically accuse Dan, a committee man in the party, of not being a good boy, basically. And then basically trying to railroad him out of the party. And in response, Dan filed a lawsuit against the Bucks County GOP, and that lawsuit is still pending. We're still waiting on the outcome on that, and we're hoping that it can actually become a statewide precedent on how these political parties, because this precedent will impact both parties if it goes up to the appellate level, will clean them up, because these parties are not operating in a clean and open and transparent manner.
The gist of this lawsuit, you had something to do with it? You helped?
I'm helping Dan. I'm certainly helping him pay for it, because I think that it is completely unacceptable. I'm a Republican, although this issue with how the parties operate is cuts across party line. I don't like this idea of this top-down party boss mentality. You know, we see voters going to on election day, and they're basically being told who to vote for, which Democrat's better than the other, you know, the endorsed candidate, which is a lot of nonsense. And the party bosses use the machine of the committee people to basically control the outcome of primary elections and what candidates they think should be going into a general election.
So just to make sure I understand the rule of law that the lawsuit seeks to establish, was there an endorsed candidate?
Ironically, no. What happened was one of the candidates, the candidate that filed the ethics complaint, simply didn't like what fellow Republican Dan was doing, and he filed an ethics complaint. So the lawsuit is basically seeking to say, you, the Bucks County GOP, cannot remove Dan Moen from his committee position because he is a publicly elected committeeman. We have to remember that committee elections are elections not held behind closed doors by party officials. The position of committeeman and committeewoman is a position that's put on the ballot, taxpayer-funded public election, for people to choose who they want to be their committee person. So in this case, the voters, the everyday Republicans of Yardley Borough, went to a free and fair public election and voted for Dan to be their committeeman. And so what the party is trying to do by getting rid of a publicly elected committee person is undo the will of the people, undo the result of a democratic election, and they want to undo it behind closed doors in party boss headquarters. And that violates the principle of democracy. If they don't want someone to be a committee person, then guess what? Run someone else against Dan Moen the next time there's a public election and have a message that you think the voters will like better. But this idea of undoing public elections behind closed doors is disgusting, and Pat Proprick should be ashamed of herself. She's the one that should be voted out of office.
And when this happened, you opened up your laptop and you put up a YouTube video.
Yeah.
And you put in some tags in the tag part of that YouTube spot, and it reached me.
Oh,
you came and did an interview in this office, and now you're talking to this camera, and this is the power of today's modern technology.
Yeah.
And this is what you have on your YouTube site. What else do you have on that YouTube channel?
Oh, anything I think about. Basically, if you go on there, you'll find all kinds of stuff. But I have about 3 or 4 different Facebook pages. Facebook is a great way, because when you make a video, it's the distribution of it. YouTube's one forum, but you can embed it into a Facebook page like that, and it goes. People can like it, share it, and boom, the message gets out. So I think that when you have a message, whatever your interests are, if you record it, and I think video is a good way of just talking about an issue. Or if you want to write it, whatever your thoughts are, put it in writing, put it into the social media forum, and get it distributed. Not many people would even think to know what a committee person is, let alone why it's important that we clean up the corruption inside our own political parties. I don't want to live in a society, you know, our founding fathers, I live 3 miles from Washington Crossing, famous little historical village, did not envision a system where political party bosses manipulate and control elections. And unfortunately, far too often, that's exactly what happens. And so I think it's important that everyday voters and citizens understand how their own parties operate.
You call yourself a political activist. We talked about that you're using the right to know request. We talked about that you're using YouTube to spread a message. What are some of the primary issues that you champion?
Right now, because it varies on where I am at any given moment in time, the #1 issue that I'm championing is we need what's called an anti-SLAPP law in Pennsylvania. SLAPP stands for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation. None of us, as American citizens, want to feel that if we speak, if we advocate, if we do these things we're talking about, making videos, getting a message out there, that someone will sue us for doing it. And unfortunately, in today's litigious society, you can be an advocate and an outspoken on any given issue, and someone can sue you frivolously and have no intention of winning, know that they're not going to win, but do it just to tie you up in legal fees, to intimidate you, to put you stress in your life. And there are other states in the nation that say, when someone files a lawsuit called SLAPP, Strategic Litigation Against Public Participation, you can file a motion to ask the judge to kill it immediately on the basis that it's frivolous and get your legal fees back. And I'm advocating and lobbying right now very heavily for that kind of a law in Pennsylvania, because without anti-SLAPP protection, we don't want to live in a society where you want to get involved, you want to get talking, but have to worry that someone's going to sue you for doing it. So that's my number one biggest thing that I'm championing right now, which is the First Amendment issue. We have to strengthen and defend the First Amendment to the Constitution, not just for me, for you, Larry, for all of us. All of us. Without anti-SLAPP, we don't have a true First Amendment, in my opinion.
Simon, how did you get involved in that SLAPP suit?
Well, what happened was I filed a big right-to-know request of 600 public school entities around the state of Pennsylvania, seeking evidence of how they give money to, taxpayer public money, to the Pennsylvania School Boards Association, which is like a trade group for school boards, and of course school boards are elected government officials. And this trade group didn't like it, and they sued me because they consider that what I did to be abusive of the right to know law. The lawsuit is frivolous. It is SLAPP. They're doing it because they don't like me and they want to shut me up.
All right. So what are you looking for with the request? This is not relevant, of course, and I understand that.
Right.
But I'm just curious because it turned out into be something unpleasant.
Right.
So what were you looking for?
I asked all the public school entities for records evidencing what PSBA, the School Boards Association, was doing with the money that they've been sent by our public school entities. Public school entities are supposed to be educating our kids. That's why we pay taxes. They give millions of dollars, all of them, to the PSBA, and my request was seeking to find out what PSBA is doing with those public tax dollars.
So this is like you just said, a trade group, a professional organization that all teachers, that most are
School board director, school board member association, not teachers.
Excuse me, okay. So this is a group that all school board member associations are all part of, that they give public money to.
Yes.
But we have no idea what they do with this money.
Right. I mean, right. Basically, we have they file annual tax returns with the IRS that gives limited information. But I was looking for details. I was looking for, what are you doing? You're declaring you have all these communication expenses. Who are you giving it to? Who are you giving that money to?
So actually, this is something that should be known anyway to begin with.
Of course. I mean, quite frankly, I don't even understand how they're allowed to be who they are. I mean, we have a public school district. When you pay your taxes to your public school district, you want kids learning math and English, not giving money to some trade group so they can go buy lobbyists, because that's what they're doing. They're paying lobbyists to go lobby for whatever they think is in, school board's interest. So
school boards.
School boards.
So
yeah.
In other words, you were a school director. So this would be conceivably or supposedly this was in the school board of, what was your school board?
My school board at Pennsbury, where I live.
So theoretically, this group was supposed to be acting in Pennsbury's and all the school boards across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania's interest.
That's what they like to believe. That's
theory.
What they say, yes. I have a different opinion about, whose interest they actually serve. I tend to think they serve their own. This is a multi-million-dollar operation, and I think that, when I come into this through the right to know law, and I'm basically seeking to uncover what they're doing, and I'm openly advocating that public school entities cancel their membership and defund them, and they flip out. Now think about that for a minute. We have government entities, public school districts. No, if you think your government entity is wasting money, maybe you think the window cleaning company is ripping off the school district, you have a right to lobby and say, hey, listen, don't give money to that window cleaning company. This is public money. The windows aren't clean and the prices are too high. I lobbied that they cut off funding for PSBA, and they sue me. I'm like, the heck with you. This is the First Amendment to the Constitution. You don't have a right to taxpayers' bank accounts.
These are mandatory donations that they're taking?
No, the school boards have a choice. They can either be members of PSBA or not. They can either send them public money or not. So I'm advocating and lobbying that they don't, because I think PSBA are a complete waste of time.
And you're trying to give school boards information so they can make this decision.
Right, and I'm lobbying the public, rallying the public, saying to the public, advocate with your school district to cut off membership to this organization. What are they doing with the money? Why don't we reclaim that money and buy math books with it?
And in response to your efforts, they did what?
They sued me. SLAPP, strategic litigation against public participation.
And Pennsylvania does not have a law?
Anti-SLAPP law, it's called. We have a very limited one. It pertains to environmental issues only. And an anti-SLAPP law says if you get sued, because you can't stop someone suing you, you have a right to immediately file a motion with the judge to say this is SLAPP, strategic litigation against public participation. If the judge agrees, you immediately get your legal fees back, the lawsuit goes away. So what an anti-SLAPP law does is it basically creates a disincentive to people like PSBA and others who would try to silence your voice, my voice, anyone that gets involved in the political process. Because, you know, if you've got money and you're powerful, you can sue someone, not because you think you're going to win, just to shut them up.
We have one other thing. It's called a Dragonetti claim. That I'm sure your lawyer explained that to you,
Yes.
but it doesn't get rid of the case right away is the only problem.
The problem with Dragonetti
get
is...
it at the end.
Right, you go through the torturous process,
Right.
and then you have to win, and then it's not always that easy to win a Dragonetti claim. Anti-SLAPP is the ultimate solution. It
Gets rid of it right
says
away.
Within 30 days, go away. That was ridiculous, it's frivolous, and the defendant's getting legal fees. And 28 states have this, and we need it.